Hey everybody, I am excited about today's topic. Today we are jumping into the topic of communication and looking to see how our communication and our faith are connected. To give you a little backstory about the content we're talking about today, it takes me back all the way back to like 2016 when I attended a conference called the Drive Conference in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was introduced to a book that was called I Said This, You Heard That. I Said This, You Heard That. And it was written by the author Kathleen Edelman. And she has become an expert in communication, in counseling and helping people to be able to communicate with one another. And the subtitle of the book was very interesting to me. It said, How Our Wiring Colors Our Communication, or how your wiring colors your communication in your life. And so before I dive into this, I want to give you a quick encouragement if you're watching, listening to this podcast, to dive into this topic. This is one of the most transformational topics that I have seen in my own profession, in pastoring a church and counseling people in life. And just dealing with relationships in general. And what I encourage you to do is check out the related content that she has available for this book. Many books are written about this that she has available, even parenting books, which are amazing. She has a YouTube channel full of resources. And in fact, if you're part of an organization, you're a leader in some capacity, you can actually book a Color Works Group speaker, which is an organization that they've created to come to your place of business, work, school, whatever it may be, church, and one of these presenters can lead and train your staff in what this looks like and dealing specifically with what we're talking about in communication. Now, I have to tell you, I'm obsessed with this, and my wife tells me all the time that I may talk about it too much, but it's such good information. And personally, like I said, very helpful for me in understanding people, helpful in my profession, helpful in counseling. And all that this is based on, to summarize it all down, is the idea of the power and the purpose of our words. The power and the purpose of our words, something that we don't often think about. But when we're talking about communication, we have to understand that communication is an essential part of our life. It is the way that we successfully, or maybe sometimes not so successfully, transfer information from what's inside of us, what we're thinking, what we're feeling, our emotions, to someone else so that they can understand what we're, thinking about, or what the context or content is that we want to tell them. And sometimes this communication can be positive, and sometimes this communication can be negative. It can have, a very effective role in our lives or take on a very ineffective role in our lives, but nonetheless, it's going to have one of those outcomes, and we have to be more intentional in order to direct our communication to help us. And we all know what this is like, because I know that you probably share this with me. You've experienced the power and the purpose of words, whether that be positive or negative, effective or ineffective. When I think back to childhood memories for myself, I can think of those positive and negative interactions. Just go back to middle school for a moment, and you probably remember some of the careless teasing of classmates, or if you've ever been part of a gossip, rumor mill of a community or neighborhood. Maybe you can remember the charming remarks of your spouse, when you were in that stage of dating, or maybe as you were, about to get married, where you were engaged with one another. I mean, that is an important time of our lives, and the communication there is very important. Or maybe if you participated in a team sport or something like that, then you know that the praise from a coach or the praise of a good job from a boss can be very important in our lives. And what we learn from that is that words ultimately have the power to shape our entire lives, to set the course and trajectory of our lives and of our children, of our spouses, of our coworkers, friends, family, whoever it may be. But the interesting thing about that is that not only do words have the power to shape our lives, but our words have the power also to shape the lives of other people. And the reality is, every day, every word that we speak has the potential to create or destroy confidence. It has the potential to start or stop relationships, or even land or lose careers. And as believers in Christ, looking at this through a faith perspective, this is so important in the way that we communicate with people. Our words and actions, we're taught in Scripture, are actually proof to the world of who we are and what we believe, and that Christ himself even exists. And Jesus teaches that there's a connection between our hearts and our mouths. He says that really it's out of the overflow of our hearts that our mouths speak. And so it's important to know, what's inside and what's going to come to the outside. But the main key verse that we're looking at through this series of podcasts as we talk about this topic, it comes from Ephesians 4, verse 29. And this is the Apostle Paul writing to a group of people in Ephesus. And simply, he says this: do not let, meaning we have control of this, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths. Any, at all, period. He goes on to say, but only speak what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Now, the importance of Paul's words here is that they are revealing. They're revealing because we have a tendency, and I know you probably sharing this with me, we have a tendency to mess this up big time. Most of the time when we're communicating with people, it's, we're wanting to prove a point, we're trying to win an argument, whatever it may be, but our intention in the conversation is not directed at building other people up, but just conveying what we need to convey. And sometimes we get it wrong, right? And maybe more times than not, we get it wrong. And what we find is that while we may not have intended for something to land with someone in the way that it does, our intentions are not enough. And so this is going to require action. It's going to require a lot of work from our standpoint towards other people. And so to break that down just a little bit, there's a few key parts of that verse that stand out to me. And the first word in that is let, that we do have control over what we say. We don't have to be reactive, but we can actually be responsive to the things that we experience in life. And when he talks about unwholesome talk coming out of our mouths, then it's things that are used to tear down, things that are used to, that are negative, that aren't used, as he says, to only build people up. And that may seem kind of weak, is it really possible? I mean, it may seem impossible, actually, that can we really speak in a way that it's just to build other people up and it's still productive? But according to Paul, when we speak this way, it's to the benefit of the person who's hearing. So we build them up, and it also is to the benefit of the people who are listening. And I have some examples I'm going to share throughout this series of just that. But the point of the series, the podcast today, is for us to simply just learn about what we call, and what Kathleen refers to as our wiring. It's our identity. It's who we are from birth. It's the innate part of us, the natural part of us. It's something that we really can't change. And then not only to figure out who we are, but then to also begin to identify who the people are that we are talking to. And then we can begin to practice choosing what is best as we communicate with that person. And the framework that Kathleen uses in this are what's known as the 4 temperaments. And she didn't come up with this. This isn't original to her. It's certainly not original to me either. But this is something that stems way back even into the Greek world, ancient Greek world. And the 4 temperaments, again, are the innate wirings of a person. And what we believe that God actually prepares in us and created us to be. And it's a natural disposition. It's kind of like your eye color and your fingerprint. You don't get to change these things. They're just part of who you are. And the 4 temperaments then are broken down into 4 colors to make it visually easy for us to understand and to navigate. And so the first group are called sanguines. And sanguines are what we refer to as yellows, okay? And yellows speak the language of people and fun. Everything is about people and fun, relationships, and how much fun a particular person or an event is going to be. And commonly, what you hear with the sanguine temperament is comments like, come with me, right? Come with me. It's going to be fun. You're going to have a blast. Or I'm sure it's all going to work out. Whatever the situation may be, they're kind of forever the optimists. Or maybe you know the person who every time you see them, they say, oh, have I got a story for you, right? That probably is a good indicator that that person is a yellow, or what we would call a sanguine. The second temperament is what is known as a choleric. And the choleric, in the language that they speak, is more set in the tone of power and control. Power and control. And the phrases that you'll hear from a choleric are often things like, hurry up, right? A tenseful, stressful situation. They've got things they need to do. I've got a lot on my to-do list. We need to get going. Or even in their delegation towards other people, of maybe you hear them say things like, I trust that you can handle this. And that's what a choleric, that's how they typically speak. And we're going to dive into these more in weeks to come. The third temperament to just introduce to you is the phlegmatic, and they are the green temperament. The green temperament speaks the language of calm and harmony. You can think of a peaceful temperament or a peaceful personality. That's your green phlegmatic. And the things that you hear from them, and that's me, that's the temperament that I fall into primarily, is you may hear them say things like, I'm fine with whatever. When there's a decision that needs to be made, this is the person who's just kind of easygoing. I'm cool with whatever everybody else decides. Or maybe you've needed something to be done or accomplished, and they haven't got around to it yet. And so you hear that, well, I haven't got to that yet. They plan on it, but they're just not there. It's not completed. And then probably the follow-up, what you'll hear with phlegmatics or the green temperament sometimes is something like, well, I hope that you're not upset, or please don't be upset, because their intention is not to let someone down, but because of their temperament, as we'll see, sometimes they're a little slower to get things accomplished. The fourth temperament is called the melancholics, and the melancholics are blue. And this blue temperament, the language that they speak is of perfection and order. Perfection and order. And the blue temperament and the things that you might hear them say are things like, if it's worth doing right, that, if it's worth doing, then do it right. You've probably heard that before. Or maybe somebody who after a long day, they're just exhausted and they say things like, I could just use a little downtime. I need some alone time to myself. Or maybe if it's a child that has a blue temperament, sometimes you'll hear them say, just let me fix one more thing. It's never enough. The perfection tendencies kind of fall in there, and just let me fix this one thing before I move on to the next project or whatever it may be. And that's typically a melancholic. And the thing about these four temperaments is the way that they're broken down and the way that they're structured, the framework, they're actually put into a grid, and we're going to attach some links so that you can see these visuals for yourself, but they're positioned in this grid and divided between introverts and extroverts and people-oriented versus task-oriented people. And I want to give a little bit of clarity to sometimes what's the confusion of introvertedness and extrovertedness, because what we're talking about when we say introvert and extrovert is actually the way that someone processes their thoughts and their feelings. So an introvert, which is your phlegmatic, your green, and your melancholic, which is the blue temperament, they direct their thoughts and their feelings inward. They tend to feel a little more deeply, it seems, and the way to express it is to say they process their thoughts and feelings before they express it. So there's process before expression. That's the way that they tend to deal with their thoughts and feelings. But then on the other side, you have extroverts, the sanguines and the cholerics, the yellows and the red temperaments, and they direct their thoughts and feelings outward. And so they process by expression. And so this is the quadrant broken into the top and bottom portions of your extroverts on the top, your introverts on the bottom. And then there's another division of this quadrant, which is left to right. And with the left and right divisions, we're dealing with people-oriented, which is your sanguines and your phlegmatics, your yellows and your greens, and your task-oriented people, which is your cholerics and your melancholics. Now, to give some clarity there, what that means is when we say that someone is people-oriented, it means that their natural inclination is towards fostering relationships. And so if you see a yellow or green adult or child, and at the end of their day, you ask them how their day went, a lot of times the way they're going to start their stories is by naming names. They're going to talk about the people that they were with. On the flip side, when you're dealing with cholerics and melancholics, the reds and the blues, they're more task-oriented. And so that means their natural inclination is toward accomplishing tasks. And so if you ask them how their days have gone, they're going to start telling you about the things they accomplished, the things that they actually did that day. Now, there's a good chance that while I've been talking about this, and if you check out the information and the links that are provided, you're going to probably start asking the question, well, if this is true, right, and we can measure this, and people aren't so unique, that we fit into these categories, then what temperament am I, right? What temperament are you? And what's neat about this is you can take a very quick assessment, and we're going to, again, link one of these assessments in the show notes. And this is not the exhaustive assessment, just a small one. And it asks you to associate with some words, about 18 questions. And once you do, it's going to provide you with an output, with a data set that's going to tell you, a number set. And whatever the majority of numbers are within each color, that's going to be your primary coloring. The thing that we learn about most people is not everybody is just true red or true green, or what we would call deep green or dark blue. But instead, everybody has a primary coloring and then also a secondary coloring. And so you may see that in your results. But as we wrap up today, this is a big step. And I encourage you to jump into this, to be a self learner, investigate this and pursue this, because this is a big step towards a new way of communicating in your life, and by communicating in such a way that you prioritize the needs of others. And the big question that I have for everybody, if you're listening to this especially, that how is your communication going for you so far? If you're married, how is your communication going for you in your marriage? How is it going for you if you're a parent with your children? What about at work? And, are you engaging with people and experiencing the tension between words? And this framework of studying the temperaments, I said this, you heard that, can be applied to every one of those areas in life. And it can cause you to rethink every conversation. And it's a really simple practice, but it has a big impact on our lives, and it will help you live, I believe, with fewer regrets, which is something that all of us are interested in, and it'll improve your life, and I believe that it'll improve the life of others around you as well. So I hope you enjoyed today. I look forward to next week as we share the next step in this, but don't forget today, I encourage you, look at the show links, dig into the content, and find out, what temperament are you?